Welcome everybody to the LEC post-game lobby. Oof, the logo in our faces. I love it. I'm Sjokz, joined by Verius, and in a minute we'll also be joined by Bwipo, his first game at one in the LEC as a jungler, and it was versus Rogue, so that is no small feat, Verius.
No, it certainly is not. They had a pretty impressive draft. They brought out the Karthus jungle, running it with teleport, which I'm sure we'll get more insight on in a little bit. But yeah, Fnatic played a good game, and I think we got to see a lot more of what we've been looking for from this Fnatic. In particular, the bot lane was stepping up. We saw a fantastic performance from Upset, a quadra kill from Nisky, and overall, all of the pieces just seemed to be connecting for Fnatic, getting a big win against Rogue.
Did it seem to you that the key was that they made a lot more happen earlier on in the game and seemed like they were in control as opposed to, well, obviously that's always what you want, but it seemed like they had a one-track mind in this game, it seemed like, in terms of when to engage and to keep engaging?
Well, I think at times we did see a couple of mishaps where they were over-aggressive, and this is an issue that we have seen from them in the past, but it does seem that Fnatic is still willing to fight you as often as they were before. The question is, can they control that aggression? Because this time round, they did have the stronger teamfight comp, and they did have the better scaling, and because they were going toe-to-toe, they were keeping the gold even. It was simply a matter of time before that Karthus ultimate came online and was just winning the fights in isolation. So I think that Fnatic drafted well for their playstyle, and if they keep doing that, then they're definitely going to be in an upward trajectory.
Give me a bit of a report card. We saw Bwipo on Rumble on day one versus Misfits, then we saw Bwipo on Udyr versus the Mad Lions, and today we saw him on Karthus. What, tickled your fancy the most?
His Karthus, mainly because he was ganking less, farming more. But I think that Bwipo still has a way to go when it comes to jungling, but I think that it's fair to say that he has a pretty solid grasp on what he needs to do, and now he's listening to everything that I say. I think Bwipo is the worst jungler I have ever seen. I mean, he can only play farming junglers. Like, oh, hey, buddy. Yeah, so he's not a bad Karthus game there, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly the easiest League of Legends game I've played. I was PvPing only against creeps, so PvEing. Sorry, I didn't actually fight champions for the majority of the game, other than when I teleported or cast my ult. So it was pretty easy to play.
Okay, talk to us about the teleport choice, obviously, for the Karthus.
I think it as a farming jungler that doesn't actually want to participate in ganks, it puts a little bit of extra pressure on the enemy team that you're normally missing. So I felt pretty good about that. I personally think it's pretty good. I didn't quite like exhaust this game, which is in my opinion the other option that's very solid. I think flash again, like what are you going to do? Flash wall someone? Yeah. Not too exciting. So whereas, like threatening to teleport behind them, like for example, we had a TP play here, bot, not this one, I think it was the one after that. I TP'd bot, and enemy team's like, oh, they're double TPing, it must be, wait, it's a jungler.
Yeah, it was when you TP'd into the bush, I remember, because I was watching, I was like, oh, it's just one person, and then it was both of you, which was...
A jungler.
So, but indeed. But does that make it a little bit more difficult? Because obviously your natural instinct is, well, as a jungler, I will go and help the lanes once in a while. It's a very different type of play, it seems to me. Why the choice for this particular strategy in this particular game?
Honestly, I felt like yesterday I tried too hard to help my lanes, and I tried to capitalize on the great play Adam made on the Olaf, and I ended up getting caught and dying to the Leona Akali, and from there the game felt very difficult. And I realized, honestly, on stage people are playing a lot more scared, and I can rely on my laners a lot more to just go down a little bit of CS, make sure they're safe, and if I have a very strong scaling champion like the Karthus, I can just grab my CS and be very happy in the game later.
Oh, it did seem like, Verius, that they problem solved pretty well from those last two games then.
Yeah, I think that it's one of those things where we already talk about it, right? Whenever you have a new roster, you are figuring out the best way to play, and we hear it from pros all the time, which is scrims versus stage are very different. Even if you are playing online, the mindset and the approach to the game is just very different. And I think Bwipo gave us some great insight there, which is that in scrims, it was probably a lot more bloody. It was probably a lot more skirmish heavy. We heard Mickey earlier on saying that he himself thought that that Fnatic was very good, and he actually expected a little more from the bot lane, but then on stage, they were a little bit more reserved. They weren't quite as aggressive, and it seems that this small adaptation that they've made, which is if they are going to be relying a little bit more on team fighting, going for more of that scaling approach, definitely seems to be the way forward. The question is, can they keep the momentum up, especially seeing as we're playing on a new patch next week once again.
I don't know if we missed it, but the player of the game was Nisky, the Kia player of the game, and it's important because Nisky was 0.8% ahead of Bwipo, so it's kind of unlucky for you, Bwipo.
I don't mind. Like I said, I didn't do anything this game. My laners carried me by surviving. I did one gank. I think, I guess 2 ganks in 15 minutes. So it's not like I actually left my jungle to do anything this game. I took dragons. I fought a lot of minions, creeps.
Yeah, you did.
I did the full PV experience, and I pressed R a couple of times, and that was good enough. So I think Nisky definitely deserves it. I think Adam deserved it as well. I think both our solo laners did very well to stay ahead in the game on champions that scale better than their opponents. And it was enough for a win.
It was enough for a win indeed, but with that, of course, the 2 previous losses, but I have to say also versus formidable opponents in Misfits and in Mad. How do you look back on now that you've been able to kind of put into practice what you have been practicing in scrims and the preparation after your role swap into the actual stage games? What are the biggest takeaways for you as a jungler?
Definitely as a jungler, I think that the way my laners behave is something that I could pay much more attention to. Comparing scrims to stage, I do feel like there's a bit of a difference, and I think addressing that and getting my laners to feel comfortable to play the way they play in scrims is something that I want to enable them to do that, because I feel like Mickey mentioned it, but I also feel like my bot lane isn't as unchained as I want them to be, because I do believe they're the strongest duo in the league, and I really want them to feel the freedom to do whatever they want and know that I have their back, and that's something we need to improve on for sure. And other elements are just experience, right? Like the Mad game, I tried to do too much, and even though I did very little, still I was getting caught and doing bad things. So being aware of how to play defensively is something that I was actually lacking. And now that I played on stage, I have a much better grasp of how to cover my lanes and which pathings I should take in order to be in the right position to make sure my laners are safe.
Oh, okay. I love that read, and I love how introspective you are about that after those stage games. I do want to ask a little follow-up in terms of the first game that you played, because that was a Rumble game. And that's kind of a tricky one with how you're approaching this game and saying, okay, I'll leave more to my laners. Because there, you had a phenomenal early game. You were mega fed. So you know, there are also going to be games, also especially in this meta, where that happens. So how do you read what went wrong there in the mid game then, as opposed to, obviously, you were doing the right things as a jungler?
I mean, in that game, I think I was spearheading the team way too much. I was like really over-forcing my advantage. I was dropping my equalizer to start fights. I was just trying to play as aggressive as I could and try to force fights, because our composition wanted people to run into us. So we had the Viego. He wants people to run into him so he can start possessing and picking people off. Lucian, Zaya, they enjoy a fight where people come to us, and that's what I was trying to get going for my team. But as a result of me being the only AP damage and the fact that I was starting the fights, I was getting focused on first. So in this Karthus game, being the only AP damage, you will notice that I had I was very much in the back seat of the game. I was waiting until the enemy team came to us, and then I started dealing damage. And I think that this adaptation was the biggest difference between my Rumble game and the Karthus game, even though in both I was very strong. And basically having the mindset of, okay, I'm fed. Even though I'm the jungler, I should still have the mindset that I am the one to kill everyone on the enemy team, and I can still carry this game if I stay alive. So trusting my teammates to pick the right fights and letting me deal damage is something that I didn't do too well in that game one. I was trying too hard to spearhead the team into a victory rather than just letting the game play out and dealing the damage where it was appropriate.
Has that also translated into a different form of shot calling from your side? Because from the comms, of course, we saw as a top laner, you were quite vocal, and I think you do have a quite democratic way of calling regardless. But have you noticed in yourself that there is a change or an evolution in the way you make the calls as the jungler?
Honestly, definitely. I think that the most important thing about jungling is remaining efficient. I think that not farming at all is not the way to go. You do want to farm some creeps, and finding ways to farm creeps but still be there in time for the objectives, for the minion waves. Being ready to contest is the most important job as a jungler, and communicating with your laners and finding a way where everyone can agree on which waves we want to contest and do stuff is something that I'm trying to do very well. So rather than demanding people to be at a certain place at a certain time, because as a top laner, you don't always have the opportunity to be there. Whereas as a jungler, you can create the opportunity whenever you want to, if you path well, right? So changing from, I need you guys to be here on this wave, I'm going to make a play here, this is my only timing, to when do you guys want to contest? I can be there whenever you decide it's a good timing.
It's really enjoyable listening to you speak about it, Bwipo, because you know we've had the privilege of knowing you for a while now, and you're always enthusiastic about the game. But to me, it sounds like that you're just enjoying learning a new role, because you are a very introspective person. You are someone that's very critical of yourself. But I can't help but feel like that you're loving playing in the jungle. Is that true? Is my impression of that right? Because you seem to be having a lot of fun in the jungle role.
Absolutely. I think it's a great experience, and I'm very grateful that Fnatic was believed in me enough to give me the chance, right? Like, you're putting your top laner in the jungle. It's not something that comes to mind to many teams, I imagine. And the fact that my team was confident in me to allow me to do this, and I can hopefully prove to them that it was worth it. I'm very grateful for this, and I'm obviously loving it because it reminds me of when I was a rookie. You know, I come into the split, people don't really know what I'm gonna do, but I know exactly what I have in mind and how I want to play the game. And this advantage is something that I think showed the most in this game. Where I think that Inspired was not 100% sure on how I was going to play the game, and he was very active early game trying to cover his lanes, whereas I knew exactly what I was going to do. And yeah, it started with pressing Q on camps, and it ended with that. So I think I got ahead naturally from this advantage.
Yeah, Razork was actually saying after your game, he was like, well, it was kind of weird playing versus Bwipo because, like, I didn't really know what he was going to do because he's new to the role or because he had a different plan, so it was harder to figure out. And I'm glad you brought up your comparison to when you were a rookie and now that this is a new experience, because Adam, of course, in the top lane is a very new player. And you were in a similar position when you were sharing the starting position with Soaz, where you had a couple of members on the team that you could really learn from in terms of experience and you could probably be guided by. Do you feel that you have a similar role of guidance now towards Adam, who stepped into your role basically in this team?
Absolutely. I think that the hardest part about it is, of course, the fact that I'm jungling as well now. So I'm like half a rookie because it's a new role for me. So obviously, I still have the experience, and I try to help him. But I think that what I should help him more is with consistent feedback, because I do think I give him like valuable feedback. It's just not consistent enough to where he manages to absorb it in a way that is consistent for him, right? Like sometimes I tell him in this type of team composition, you should use your teleport this way. Like this is how you should be thinking. And I tell him once, and then I expect him to remember it for like next week, right? When it happens again. So I think that being a bit more consistent in feedback with him and trying to help him more as I gradually get better is definitely what I want to improve in our relationship. But the most important thing is definitely communication between me and him, because obviously he's new, I'm new to the role. My experience is limited, so sometimes I have difficulty to tell when he needs me and when he doesn't. And because he's new, I think he's also getting used to communicating and taking a more commanding role in terms of demanding resources from me, right? Because obviously he's coming into a team with Nisky. Our bot lane is renowned for being very strong, so I think that he needs to be comfortable in demanding his own resources as well, and I want to guide him so that he can feel okay to call me if I'm around, or even if I'm not.
If you're not, okay. But I really like the way you're approaching this situation. I think I mean, it must not have been an easy situation. You do get to go into a new role, and there's someone else in the lane you've been in for such a long time, this team. And I think I applaud you in the way you're approaching this situation, and that you're open to giving this new player feedback and the way you're looking to evolve yourself. That is always a pleasure to hear. We're going to move on, although I have a million more questions as usual, but we're going to take a look at the standings, because after the first 3 games of LEC Summer, Misfits are undefeated at the top of the table. Vedius, maybe you first. Did the Bunnies catch you off guard?
A little bit, yeah. I think that their schedule suggests that, like, okay, it was well within reason for them to start strong at the beginning of the split. They do have a bit of a history of being Fnatic, but
That's true.
Aside from that, I think that Misfits have shown a strong core aspect of how they want to approach the game. They've shown that they can be aggressive in the early game, and I think that Razork as a player is willing to fight you and is very proactive in the early game. And depending on the comp that's built around them, they're willing to adapt their style, whether it be scaling for the late game team fights, or whether it be looking for skirmishes and being a little bit more proactive in the early game. The one thing I can say for certain is that VTO has definitely grown a lot as a player. He seems way more confident, he seems way more reliable as a mid laner, and I'm only excited to see where he goes from this point forward.
Bwipo, what is your read on Misfits and how strong they are right now?
I think that they seem like a very resilient team, which is obviously a very important trait if you want to make it far at any league scene or tournament. They were falling behind like 5k or 4k against us, but they were still looking for opportunities and they were still patient. And I think that having that patience, even though you're behind in gold, is something that's very akin of a very high tier team. And I think that that's a trait that I saw from them in the majority of the games they played this week.
Thaddeus, could it be that because they focused on the same roster and they could really like intensively troubleshoot a couple of things that they learned from the split? Is that maybe what we're seeing, especially in the beginning of a split where they are a team that haven't made any changes?
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And I mean, the other big thing for me is I think Van is playing extremely well.
Yeah.
I think you highlighted it at the beginning of the day, Sjokz, and I think we need to just keep reiterating it. He is that unsung hero, largely, of this Misfit squad, where I feel that a large part of their success seems to be coming from not only his individual plays, but I can only assume his communication within the team as well. And we had an interview with him. He gave a lot of insight too, and I think that overall that he and Misfits have shown a lot of growth from last split to this split, and hopefully they can contend with, as Gulberg and Trevor put it, the top 4 that we have in the league.
Yeah, someone pointed it out to me on Twitter, I believe, that if you look at kind of how the standings are, the teams that, for the majority that are doing the best are the teams that have not made any changes, and the teams that have made changes are the ones that are towards the bottom of the table, with the exclusion of SK then, I believe.
That is very true.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, SK has a sub because of the health situation, so
That
maybe
is
that
true.
also, it all comes to play. And Bwipo, I guess that is somewhat to be expected. It's a trend that we see often in the beginning of a split, right? The fact that the other teams are figuring it out, the teams that have played together have better results.
I mean, I think that building for long-term success compared to short-term, like maybe this is too short-term to even call it short-term, but I think that when a lot of changes happen, I think everyone around the team expects them to bear fruit in the long term. And I think that after a super week, I don't think you should be discouraged if you're 1-2-0-3. I think what's really important is that you can identify what went wrong in the games and then try to work on that, because, well, if you can do that, you've still got 15 games to go, right? So especially with the win today, I feel very motivated to improve my play as a jungler and aim towards being the best.
Absolutely. I mean, 1 and 2 scoreline does not look that bad, right? That's we're not
Especially in the
panic.
context of the
How about
competition,
worse?
right?
Yeah, we've had worse. Yeah.
How about worse?
A few times before. Let's take a look at the Kia player of the game leaderboard, because VTO is in sole possession of first place with 3 out of 3 wins, followed by Humanoid and Hans Sama. Now, Bwipo, there's been a big discussion about Akali so far. We see that VTO, of course, he completely smurfed on it as well, did Humanoid. What is your judgment on how strong or overpowered or too overpowered the champion is in pro play, specifically in the LEC?
I think the biggest difficulty about Akali is that you have to specifically draft champions that have tools against her Shroud, because obviously you can only reveal her if you have true sight revealing champions. So Kai'Sa comes to mind, Lee Sin, there's a couple more other ones, but the teams that picked Akali, so for example, in both games we played against Akali, they grabbed the Kai'Sa on the together with the Akali. So basically one of the best options in the meta, which is the Kai'Sa to answer the Akali, gets taken away, and all of a sudden her Shroud is a 5-second stealth, right? And you can do with it as you like. And when her Shroud is an ability that she can manipulate the way she wants to, it makes it incredibly difficult to play against, because not only does she have multiple dashes, she also has a 5-second stealth, and she can decide how to use all of those tools. Well, not to mention that if she hits E on you, you're probably dead.
Yeah.
A combination of all these tools means that you have to respect her in the Shroud, but at the same time, she can still kill you and come out of the Shroud if she wants to. She can also run away from her Shroud if she wants to. She seems to have a few too many options when you can't reliably pin her down in the Shroud. And I think that moving forward, a lot of teams will have to look into drafting those options. Playing against Akali, either you pick champions that have a lot of AoE so that she can't feel comfortable in her Shroud, you know, maybe like a Gragas that can knock her out. Brock is a pretty good champion too, although I got one-shot a couple of times. I think that you can usually bully her out of her Shroud, if you will. But yeah, she's let's put it this way, a little bit too much of everything. Too much damage, too much mobility, too much safety.
So kind of like Gwen.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the only difference between Gwen is she has a dash every few seconds, and Akali has 3 every few seconds, so it's not every few seconds, but yeah.
Tomato, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the difference in mobility and burst is like the big issue here. You know, I think that Gwen's burst is very telegraphed, and whilst I agree Gwen is too safe, I think she actually has to, you have to get outplayed by Gwen in the idea that you have to take a bad fight into her in order for her to really ace your team. Whereas against Akali, I feel like she has good chances of doing some questionable things under it.
Regardless. Do you think it's a Vedius combination? Also, we've talked about it before, but it's not just the champion kits, but also just because of this season's item overhaul and the particular items that complement so well with an Akali. That's also an issue. So
it definitely seems like it. But saying that, we also saw the Proto Belt come out from Humanoid today as well. So it seems like that she has a few more
She has a lot of options, actually.
So the champion is perhaps a little more versatile than initially anticipated. But also, Europe does love Akali. We have a lot of very talented Akali players. And we also have a lot of top laners that like Akali too, that we're yet to see. But I imagine that we will see very soon if she makes it through the ban table once.
I think you play a bit of Akali too.
I love Akali. Not very good at her though.
One shroud is not the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Next Friday, we'll get to see a awesome matchup in the jungle. Vitality versus Fnatic. Selfmade and Bwipo go head-to-head in the jungle as Vitality and Fnatic, as I already said, face off. Now, that's a spicy one, Bwipo. Are you looking forward to playing versus your ex-teammate?
I am actually. I mean, ultimately, I think we actually still talk quite regularly, and we're on the same page when it comes to a lot of the jungle meta. So honestly, like I think it can only be a great learning experience for me. That's the way I look at it. I think Selfmade is still a really strong player individually, and I look forward to playing against him. Not even for bragging rights, honestly. It's just I actually learned to respect him a lot more in the past few months, and I think that with this respect, I can hopefully learn a thing or two from him, because obviously he was a scrim partner of mine for the past few weeks, as it is, and honestly, I just look forward to it in a very healthy manner. Not like I want to destroy this guy.
I was really hoping you were going to say you're going to insta-lock Evelyn and show him how it's done. You know what I mean? That's why I was kind of hoping. But okay, respect is also fine, I guess.
Yeah, no, respect is great. Rogue versus G2, that'll be our match of the week. Week? No, not week. Well, week, but not the way I said it first. Anyway, match of the week. Vedius, what do you think?
Good game. Exciting.
Good game. Great game. Okay, great. Bwipo, prediction? Rogue or G2?
That's a difficult one. I mean, we just showed them how it's done against Rogue, I guess.
True.
Good things will happen. So, nah, jokes aside, I think Rogue's a very strong team, and I think that if they feel comfortable to get going early game, I think that that's where they will do their due diligence, because I feel like this game, I feel like Inspired was feeling a bit chained because he was, a bit unsure about what I was going to do. And I think that when Inspired is well prepared and comes into the game knowing what the enemy jungler is going to do, he is very, very smart at finding answers and finding ways to punish that. So once they do some extra scouting on me, I'm sure I'll get to play against a different Inspired. But given the fact that Jankos has been around for a very long time and that Rogue has had his number before, I would say with the right prep, Rogue is going to take it. But G2's still looking pretty good, so we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. Very excited for those matches next week. Thank you so much, Bwipo. I'd like to take a selfie if you don't mind. And Vedius can be there as well, I guess. Also,
thank you.
Also, I forgot, but I can't actually close my pants when I sit down. Blame Corona. Lockdown, so I'm just going to hold this in front of them.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. There we go. Gonna try and get everyone in here socially distant, kind of. Yay! Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Bwipo. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, we'll see you next week. And that was all from us here tonight. But the weekend's far from over. LCS has Golden Guardians versus FlyQuest, and we'll be back next Friday for more League of Legends. We'll see you then. Hope you had fun. Bye-bye.
Summoner Heal comes out and he survived long enough for the teleport to channel. Here comes Broken Blade with the Blade of the Ruined King. He gets himself a kill, he gets himself a Heartbreaker, and he's now looking for all the CC. gets the boop, chucks out the mines, still has the Dreadline available to him, and Limit and Neon are here for the support. Jumps back to his original form and a beautiful teleport double. The fight isn't over just yet. Herod will slice and dice his way forward. A flash forward from Rozok. He's overheating and punching Vitality in the face. That's one back, but two more for Misfits. They come out on top. Shows a lot of the experience on that pick, and Equalizer comes out to SLT. So much damage from Herod, and the heal is enough to save him. Gigantic health bonus there from the Dominus. Mad Lions just needed the time for the team to arrive. That's the fourth. That's going to be another one here to Jesco. That's the ace as well. Mad Lions putting on a master class in defense.
Maybe he can just play for the Dragon Soul here. As Wonder's getting more and more comfortable in this matchup. Dominus coming out. Genex wants to turn it back. It's Fury, but Spectral Maw connects. Good shielding coming in for Wonder. Ulti comes in. Genex taken out. And that's the power of Viego in a side lane. It's Rogue versus Fnatic. It's going to be an absolute banger, and I think an absolute mess of a game. Fnatic have been all-out aggressive, and Rogue have been incredibly early game dominant.
Bwipo doesn't have mana. Bwipo does not have mana to press ultimate, so Larson will get away with this one. No, he does. He fakes just in time. He's going to die. Oh, he levels up on the creep.
Meanwhile, on the backside, it's Adam. He's going to spin. That's the Karthus assault coming down.
Oh my God.
Jumps into the backside. Goes bolded, buys a bit more space, but they're just getting shredded alive. Odoamne still standing. Larson manages to get one back, but Nisky free firing. That's the triple. That's the quadra for Nisky coming through. Massive fight for Fnatic.